They said the cave I inherited was completely worthless. But the moment my dog started digging, everything I thought I knew about my past, and the people who betrayed us, changed forever. The night I walked away with nothing, I thought my life was already over. No family, no future. Just me and the one soul who never left my side. But that mountain, it wasn't empty. And what we found buried beneath it wasn't just a secret. It was the truth they tried to erase. A truth that nearly killed us, and somehow saved me. Before we go any further, comment below where you're watching from. I want to know who's here with us on this journey. The clock on the peeling wall clicked over to 12 a.m., and just like that, the room stopped belonging to me. It wasn't loud. No alarms, no shouting, just the quiet, the final tick of a second hand, and everything I had left in the world shifted beneath my feet. Time's up, Logan. Mr. Halverson didn't look at me when he said it. He stood by the door of the Veteran Housing Center, arms folded tight against his chest, like he was bracing himself against the cold, or maybe against me. I sat on the edge of the narrow cot, boots already on, jacket half-zipped. I'd been waiting for it. You don't spend years in the system without learning how endings feel before they arrive. Still, I thought there might be a few more minutes. Midnight, he added, glancing at his clipboard. Policy says you're no longer eligible. Policy. That word had followed me from the desert to the hospital bed, from the hospital bed to this place. Always clean, always final, never wrong. I nodded slowly and stood up. But the room was bare. It had been for weeks. Everything I owned fit into a single duffel bag resting against the wall. Worn jeans, 2 shirts, a pair of socks that had seen better years, and a folded photo I didn't look at anymore. Atlas stood up the moment I moved. The German Shepherd had been lying at the foot of the bed, ears twitching even in sleep. Now he was alert, eyes locked on me, reading the shift in the air before I said a word. It's okay, boy, I murmured, though nothing about this felt okay. His tail didn't wag. It never did when something was wrong. He just stepped closer. Always closer. Mr. Halverson cleared his throat. You can't stay in the lobby. We've got new intake tomorrow. Yeah, I said quietly. I know. I slung the duffel over my shoulder. It felt lighter than it should have. Or maybe I was just too tired to feel the weight anymore. Atlas moved to my side, shoulder brushing against my leg. We walked out together. The hallway lights buzzed overhead, flickering like they couldn't decide whether to stay on or give up. The building smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. I'd memorized every inch of it over the past year, every creak in the floor, every voice behind every door. Now it all felt distant, like I was already gone. At the front desk, a woman I barely knew avoided eye contact as she slid something across the counter. A package came for you, she said. I stopped. A package? She nodded. Dropped off this afternoon. Legal documents, I think. Legal. That word didn't belong in my life anymore. I set the duffel down and picked up the envelope. Thick, off-white. My name printed in clean, formal letters. Logan Pierce. I stared at it longer than I should have. Who's it from? I asked. She shrugged. Didn't say. Just important looking. Important. I almost laughed. Nothing about me had been important in a long time. Thanks, I muttered. I tucked the envelope under my arm and picked up my bag again. The front doors opened with a soft hiss, and the cold hit me like a wall. Colorado nights didn't mess around. The air cut straight through the fabric of my jacket, into bone, into memory. For a split second, My brain twisted it into something else. Dry heat, burning sand, the distant crack of gunfire. My breath caught. Atlas pressed harder against my leg, grounding me. "Hey, hey," I whispered, crouching slightly to run my hand along his neck. "I'm here. It's just the cold." His ears flicked, yet he didn't look away from the darkness beyond the parking lot. Neither did I. There were no cars waiting, no rides, no one leaning against a hood, checking their watch. Just an empty lot, cracked asphalt, and a streetlight buzzing overhead like it was struggling to stay alive. I stepped out. The doors slid shut behind me with a quiet finality that echoed louder than any slam. And just like that, I was outside. No bed, no place, no one. Atlas and I stood there for a moment, the wind tugging at my jacket, the silence stretching longer than it should. "Guess it's just us again," I said. He leaned into me, always the same answer. I walked to the edge of the lot and dropped my bag beside the curb. My hands were already stiff from the cold, but I forced them to move, tearing open the envelope. Paper slid free. To official letterhead, clean, sharp font, the kind of thing that belonged in offices with polished floors and people who wore ties even when they didn't need to. I scanned the first few lines. Law offices of Daniel Reeves. Estate of Harold Pierce. My brow tightened. Harold Pierce. The name meant nothing at first. Just letters on a page. Another stranger in a world full of them. Then something shifted. A memory, faint, distant. A man I'd seen once, maybe twice, when I was a kid. Quiet, kept to himself. My mother had called him your uncle, though I barely remembered his face. He was gone. Had been for years as far as I knew. I read on. Sole beneficiary. Transfer of property. Black Hollow Ridge. My eyes stopped on the next line. A cave structure located on approximately 3 acres of mountainous terrain. A cave. I let out a slow breath that fogged in the cold air. "That's it?" I muttered. Atlas tilted his head slightly, watching me. "A cave," I repeated, a dry edge creeping into my voice. "Somewhere out in the middle of nowhere." I flipped the page, scanning faster now. No mention of money, no accounts, no assets, just land, rock, and a cave that had apparently collapsed decades ago. I almost crumpled the paper right there. "This is a joke," I said under my breath. A bitter laugh slipped out before I could stop it. "Yeah, that sounds about right." Left with nothing, and then handed something even less than nothing. Atlas didn't move. He just watched me. I exhaled slowly and folded the letter back up, more carefully this time. Still," I said, quieter now. "It's something." The words didn't sound convincing, even to me, but I'd learned a long time ago, you don't throw away the last thing you've got, no matter how worthless it looks. I slid the envelope into my jacket. The wind picked up, colder now, biting at any skin it could find. I glanced down the empty road stretching away from the center. No destination, no plan. Just miles of dark. "All right," I said, adjusting the strap on my shoulder. "Let's move." Atlas stepped forward before I did, already choosing a direction. He always did that, like he knew the path, even when I didn't. I followed him. Step by step, we left the light behind. The street lamp faded, the building disappeared, and the night swallowed us whole. Somewhere out there, past the mountains and the cold and the miles of nothing, was a piece of land no one wanted. A collapsed cave, a worthless inheritance. I didn't know it yet. But that was the place that was going to change everything. "Stay close, Atlas," I said softly. He didn't need the reminder. He never did. And as we walked deeper into the dark, I had no idea that something buried beneath that mountain was already waiting for us. I didn't know it then. All I knew was the cold. It settled into my bones before the sun even came up. Atlas and I didn't get far that first night. A gas station on the edge of town left its side awning lights on, and the concrete beneath them was just dry enough to keep the worst of the wind off. I leaned against the wall, pulling my jacket tighter, while Atlas curled close, yet his body pressed against my leg like a living heater. I didn't sleep much. Every time my eyes closed, something followed me in. Flashes, noise, heat, a convoy rolling through dust, the crack of something sharp in the distance, the weight of a rifle in my hands. Then, silence. Too much silence. My eyes snapped open. The gas station sign buzzed overhead. Atlas lifted his head immediately, scanning the empty road. "It's nothing," I whispered, though my chest was still tight. His gaze stayed fixed for another second, then slowly relaxed. Morning came gray and dull, like the world hadn't decided whether it wanted to wake up. I stood stiffly, joints protesting, and stretched my back. Atlas shook himself off, then looked up at me, waiting. "All right," I said. "Well, let's see what this inheritance really is." The address on the letter led us back into town. Downtown was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just hadn't looked closely before. Buildings leaned slightly with age. Windows were dusty. A diner sign flickered like it had one foot in the past. The law office sat between a pawn shop and a hardware store. Law offices of Daniel Reeves. The sign was clean, new, out of place. I hesitated at the door. Atlas stepped forward first. He always did. The bell above the door chimed softly as we entered. Warm air hit my face, carrying the smell of coffee and paper. It felt too calm. A woman at the front desk looked up. Her smile faltered for just a second when she saw me. Mud on my boots, jacket worn thin, Atlas at my side, but she recovered quickly. "Can I help you?" "Logan Pierce, fella," I said. "I got a letter." She typed something, then nodded. "Mr. Reeves is expecting you." Of course he was. That didn't make it feel any less strange. She gestured down the hallway. Atlas stayed close as we walked, his nails clicking softly on the polished floor. The office at the end was half open. "Mr. Pierce?" a voice called. "Come in." Daniel Reeves stood behind his desk, sleeves rolled neatly, tie loosened just enough to look human. Mid-40s, maybe. Sharp eyes, but not unkind. He glanced at Atlas. "Service animal?" "Something like that," I said. Reeves nodded once. "He can stay." I stepped inside, lowering my bag beside the chair, but not sitting yet. "You received the documents," he said. "Yeah." I pulled the folded letter from my jacket. Says I inherited land." Reeves exhaled slowly, like he'd already had this conversation in his head a dozen times. "Yes," he said, "from your uncle, Harold Pierce." I barely knew him. That's often how these things go. He reached into a file and pulled out a thick stack of papers. Deeds, maps, official stamps. He spread them across the desk. "This," he said, tapping one of the maps, "is Black Hollow Ridge." I stepped closer. The map showed a stretch of rugged terrain. No roads, no nearby structures. Just elevation lines stacked tight together like warning signs. 3 acres, Reeves continued. Mountain land, remote, no utilities, no infrastructure. "Okay," I said slowly. "So what's it worth?" He paused. That was never a good sign. "On paper," he said, "practically nothing." I stared at him. "Pure nothing." He shook his head. "It's not buildable land, Mr. Pierce. Too steep, no water access. And the primary feature? The cave, I cut in. Yes, he said. Collapsed nearly 30 years ago. Completely sealed by rockfall. No access point. So it's just rocks. That's one way to put it. A dry laugh slipped out of me before I could stop it. Figures. Reeves didn't smile. There is one more thing, he said. I looked up. Before he could continue, the office door opened behind me. The air shifted. You don't need words to feel it when someone walks in with power. Heavy footsteps. Measured. Confident. I turned. The man standing there didn't belong in a place like this. Tailored coat. Clean lines. Shoes that had never seen dirt. Everything about him said money, but not the kind that needed to prove itself. His eyes landed on me, then flicked to Atlas. Atlas was already tense. Ears forward, muscles tight. A low, almost silent growl building in his chest. Mr. Reeves, the man said smoothly, stepping inside like he owned the room. I see our young heir has arrived. Reeves straightened slightly. Mr. Vane, I wasn't expecting you this early. Marcus Vane. The name clicked into place from somewhere in the back of my mind. Real estate. Development. Big projects out near the ridge. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I like to be efficient, he said. His gaze returned to me. Logan Pierce, he said. I've been looking for you. Something about the way he said it made my skin tighten. Why? I asked. He stepped closer, glancing briefly at the papers on the desk. Because you now own a piece of land I'm very interested in. Of course. I crossed my arms slightly. It's just rocks, right? His smile didn't change. Mostly, he said. But rocks can be useful. Gravel, foundation, expansion. He reached into his coat and pulled out a check. Clean, crisp, already signed. I'll make this simple, he said. I'll take the land off your hands. Today. He placed the check on the desk and slid it toward me. I looked down. $1,000. For a second, just a second, it felt like a lifeline. Food. A room. A few nights without cold biting into my bones. I could almost feel it. Then, Atlas growled. Not loud, but enough. Every muscle in his body had gone rigid. His eyes locked on Marcus, unblinking. I felt it too, and that same instinct that had kept me alive in places where thinking too long got you killed. Something wasn't right. I looked back at the check, then at Marcus. If it's worthless, I said slowly, why are you here? The room went quiet. Marcus's smile stayed in place, but something underneath it shifted. A fair question, he said. Let's just say I see potential where others don't. Atlas took a step forward, closer to me, closer to him. Marcus's eyes flicked down to the dog for the first time with something sharper than annoyance. Control your animal, he said. He's not wrong often, I replied. Reeves cleared his throat, tension creeping into his voice. Gentlemen, I'll give you a day, Marcus said, cutting him off. His tone cooled, losing the polished edge. Think it over, but understand something. But Logan, he leaned in slightly. That land isn't going to help you. It's going to cost you. Taxes, liability, trouble. His voice dropped just enough. Take the money while it still means something. He straightened, adjusting his coat like nothing had happened. Then he turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. Silence filled the room. I looked down at the check again, then at Atlas. He was still staring at the door, still tense, still ready. Yeah, I murmured. I felt it too. Reeves exhaled slowly. You don't have to decide right now. I folded the check in half, then again, and set it back on the desk. I'm not selling, I said. Not yet. Not without seeing it first. Because if there was one thing I'd learned, when a man like that wants something that bad, it's never worthless. Auntie Atlas's ears flicked slightly, like he already knew what was coming. And somewhere out there, past the ridge and the rock and the silence, something was still waiting for us. I didn't say anything as we stepped out of the law office. The door shut behind me with a soft click, but the weight of that room followed me out into the street. The cold hit again, sharper now, but it didn't matter. My mind was somewhere else. Atlas stayed tight at my side, his shoulder brushing my leg like he was anchoring me. $1,000, I muttered under my breath. It sounded bigger in my head than it looked on that piece of paper. $1,000 could buy time. Time meant food. Time meant a bed that didn't move every time I shifted. Time meant not waking up in the middle of the night wondering if the cold would finish what everything else hadn't. But I exhaled slowly, watching the breath drift into the gray air. We could use it, I said. Atlas didn't respond. He never did when I talked like that. We walked without direction at first. The town moved around us, cars passing, doors opening and closing, voices drifting in and out. But none of it stuck. It all felt distant, like I was walking through something I didn't belong to anymore. I stopped at a crosswalk, staring at nothing in particular. Then, a sound. Sharp, metallic. My body locked up. For a split second, I wasn't in Colorado anymore. I was back there. Heat pressing down from above, dust in my throat. The distant echo of something snapping in the distance. Too far to see, close enough to matter. Logan. The voice didn't belong here. It belonged somewhere else. I turned. Nothing. I'm just a passing truck rattling over uneven asphalt. But my heart didn't slow down. It never did right away. Atlas pressed into me harder, his head nudging against my hand. Hey, I whispered, forcing my fingers to move, gripping the thick fur along his neck. I'm good. I'm good. He didn't look convinced. Neither was I. We crossed the street. The diner on the corner had its lights on, warm and steady. The smell of coffee drifted out every time the door opened. For a moment, I stood there, just watching. People inside laughed. Plates clinked. Someone poured a fresh cup of something hot. Normal. It felt like watching another life through glass. My stomach tightened. I hadn't eaten since yesterday. I reached into my pocket. Nothing. No coins. No bills. Just the folded envelope pressing against my side. And I looked back down the street, back toward the law office, back toward the check sitting on that desk. Would have been easy, I said quietly. Atlas's ears flicked. I closed my eyes for a second. Just a second. And then, it hit me. Not a memory. A feeling. The same one I'd felt before stepping onto a road that didn't look dangerous. The same one that made the air feel thicker than it should. The same one that whispered, "Don't." I opened my eyes. "Yeah," I murmured. "I know." Atlas relaxed just a fraction. We kept walking. The town thinned out as we moved north. Buildings turned into empty lots. Pavement cracked into gravel. The sounds of traffic faded into something quieter, more honest. A bus stop bench sat crooked near the edge of the road. I dropped my bag beside it and sat down. Atlas remained standing, watching, always watching. I pulled the envelope from my jacket again, unfolding the papers carefully this time. Black, hollow ridge, coordinates, elevation, notes about access, or the lack of it. 8 miles, I said, scanning the map. Maybe more on foot. Atlas shifted slightly. You up for that? I asked. He looked at me like the question didn't make sense. A faint smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Yeah, I said. Figured. A car slowed as it passed, then stopped. I looked up. Black SUV, clean. Engine still running. The window rolled down slowly. Marcus Vane. Of course. He didn't step out this time. Just sat there, one hand resting lightly on the wheel, like he had all the time in the world. I had a feeling you wouldn't go far, he said. I didn't answer. Atlas stepped slightly in front of me. Subtle. Protective. While Marcus's eyes flicked to him again, irritation flashing just beneath the surface. You look cold, he continued. Hungry. Still no answer. He leaned an arm on the window frame. I don't blame you for hesitating, he said. Pride can be expensive. I stood slowly. Is there a reason you're following me? I asked. A faint smile. I prefer to call it efficiency. His gaze dropped briefly to my bag, then back to my face. You don't have anything, Logan, he said. Voice softer now, almost reasonable. No money, no support, no safety net. Each word landed clean, measured. You walk out of town with that land. You're not walking towards something, he added. You're walking away from your last chance. I felt it, that pull, the one that tries to convince you that maybe, just maybe, giving up is the smart move. I glanced at Atlas. He hadn't moved, still watching, still ready. You ever been out there? I asked. Marcus's expression didn't change. I've seen enough, he said. Then why do you want it? A pause. Just long enough. Then, because I can use it, he replied. Not why. What? I took a step closer to the car, close enough to see my reflection faintly in the tinted glass. You're offering me money for something everyone else says is worthless, I said. You show up before I even get a chance to see it. Marcus's jaw tightened just a fraction. That's how business works, he said. No, I replied quietly. That's how something else works. The silence stretched. Then Atlas growled, low, deep, not loud enough to draw attention, but loud enough for Marcus to hear it. His eyes dropped to the dog again, this time with something colder. You should keep that animal under control, he said. I didn't move. He's the only reason I'm still here, I said. Another pause. Then Marcus leaned back slightly. You're making a mistake, he said. Maybe, I answered, but it'll be mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he nodded once, slow, deliberate. All right, he said. Go see your land. Something in the way he said it didn't sound like permission. It sounded like a warning. But when you're ready to come back, he added, the offer won't be the same. The window rolled up. The SUV pulled away. Gone. Just like that. The road fell quiet again. I stood there for a long second, watching the space where the car had been. Then I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Yeah, I muttered. Definitely not normal. Atlas nudged my hand. I reached down, resting it against his head. We're going, I said. No hesitation this time. No second guessing. I grabbed my bag, adjusted the strap, and stepped off the pavement. The road ahead narrowed quickly, turning from gravel to dirt, then to something that barely qualified as a path. Mountains rose in the distance, dark, still, waiting. And for the first time since midnight, I wasn't just walking because I had nowhere else to go. I was walking towards something that didn't want to be found. "Stay close, Atlas," I said. He didn't need the reminder. He was already moving ahead of me, leading the way into the ridge, and as the last signs of town disappeared behind us, the silence came back, deeper, heavier, but like the mountain itself was holding its breath, waiting. The road disappeared faster than I expected. One minute there was gravel under my boots. The next it was nothing but dirt, roots, and uneven ground that shifted with every step. The town behind us faded into silence, swallowed by distance and trees that grew thicker the higher we climbed. Atlas didn't hesitate. He moved ahead, steady and sure, weaving through brush and fallen branches like he'd been here before. Every few steps he glanced back at me, not waiting, just checking, making sure I was still there. "Yeah," I muttered, catching my breath. "I'm coming." The air changed as we moved higher, colder, thinner. It carried the scent of pine and damp earth, mixed with something older, something untouched. Black Hollow Ridge. I checked the map again, but fingers stiff from the cold. We were heading in the right direction, but the lines on paper didn't show the steepness, or the way the ground tilted just enough to make every step feel like it might slide out from under you. By midday, my legs were burning. By afternoon, they were shaking. Atlas didn't slow down. "Must be nice," I said, half out of breath. "4 legs, no complaints." He flicked an ear but kept moving. The trail, if you could call it that, narrowed into a strip of packed dirt between thick brush. Thorny branches scraped against my jacket. Loose stones rolled under my boots. I slipped once, caught myself on a tree. The bark tore into my palm, sharp and sudden. For a split second, the world tilted. The tree in front of me wasn't a tree anymore. It was a broken wall. Dust filled the air. Voices shouted, too loud, too fast. "Logan, move!" My chest tightened. My breath hitched. The sound came again, distant, but clear. A crack. Not here. Not now. "Logan!" I blinked. The forest snapped back into place. Cold air. Pine. Silence. Atlas stood in front of me, closer than before, his eyes locked onto mine. "Yeah," I said quickly, forcing air into my lungs. "I'm here." My hand was still pressed against the tree, fingers digging into the bark like I needed to hold on to something real. Atlas stepped forward and nudged my leg. Grounding, always grounding. I pushed myself upright and shook my head once, hard. "Just a flash," I muttered. "I'm good." He didn't believe me, but he moved on, and so did I. The climb got worse the higher we went. The ground turned slick in patches where the sun barely touched it. Fallen logs forced us to detour, while thick brush slowed every step. My breath came shorter now, sharper. I hadn't realized how much strength I'd lost, or maybe I just hadn't wanted to admit it. "You'd think," I said between breaths, "they'd mention the whole mountain trying to kill you part in the paperwork." Atlas paused ahead, ears pricked. I stopped too. Something shifted in the air. Not a sound. Not exactly. More like the absence of one. No wind. No birds. Nothing. Atlas's body went rigid. His head turned slightly to the left, eyes narrowing into the trees. "What is it?" I whispered. He didn't answer, just stared. I followed his gaze. Nothing. Just shadows and branches. But the feeling, that same feeling, the one that crept in quiet. I swallowed. "All right," I said softly. "We keep moving." Atlas didn't argue, but he stayed closer after that, much closer than before. The sun dipped lower as the hours passed, casting long shadows between the trees. The temperature dropped with it, fast enough to feel. My jacket wasn't enough anymore. My hands were numb. My legs felt like they were carrying twice the weight they should. Still, we kept going. Because turning back wasn't an option. Not anymore. The map said we were close. The terrain confirmed it. The slope steepened sharply, the ground breaking into jagged rock and loose gravel. Every step had to be placed carefully. One wrong move and you'd slide 10 feet down before you could stop yourself. Atlas climbed ahead, sure-footed, then turned and waited as I followed. Yeah, I muttered. Show off. But there was something else in the way he moved now. Focused, alert, like he knew we were near something. Oh, and then we reached it. Or what was left of it. The trees thinned suddenly, opening into a wide, uneven clearing carved into the side of the mountain. The ground was littered with massive gray boulders, some the size of trucks, piled on top of each other like they'd been thrown there by something bigger than sense. I stopped. My chest rose and fell heavily as I stared. "This is it," I said quietly. Black, hollow ridge. The cave. Or what used to be one. Now it was just rock. Endless, jagged rock stretching across the face of the mountain. No entrance. No opening. Nothing. Just a wall of stone that looked like it had been there forever. I stepped closer, boots crunching against loose gravel. "Reeves wasn't kidding," I muttered. "It's completely sealed." Atlas moved past me, stepping carefully between the rocks, sniffing, watching. I dropped my bag and walked up to the nearest boulder, placing my hand against it. Cold, solid, unmoving. "This is what I traded $1,000 for," I said under my breath. The words felt heavier now. Out here, they sounded different, less like a joke, more like a mistake. The wind picked up suddenly, cutting across the clearing with a sharp edge. It carried the smell of stone and something faintly metallic. Or maybe that was just my imagination. I stepped back, looking at the ridge as a whole. Nothing. No sign of life. No sign of anything. Just silence. Too much silence. A flicker of something tightened in my chest. Not fear. Not exactly. More like doubt. "You really messed this one up," I muttered. Atlas didn't answer. He had moved farther left now, near where the rockfall met the sheer cliff face. His head was low, nose close to the ground, moving slowly. Focused. I watched him for a second, then turned away. The cold bit deeper now. The sun was dropping fast, and reality was settling in. No shelter. No fire. No way out before night. I ran a hand over my face, dragging it down slowly. "All right," I said. "We find somewhere to hole up. Figure it out in the morning." My voice sounded tired. Too tired. Atlas didn't come back. I glanced over. He was still there. Still searching. Still not giving up. A faint crease formed between my brows. "What is it?" I called out. No response. Just that same focused movement. Back and forth, like he was following something I couldn't see. The wind shifted again, and for a brief second, I thought I felt it, and a faint breath of air, warmer than it should have been. I froze. Atlas stopped too. His head lifted slightly. Then slowly, he turned toward me, and in his eyes, there was something new. Not fear, not confusion, recognition. Like he had just found something buried, something hidden, something that didn't belong out here. The mountain wasn't empty. It had never been. And whatever was underneath all that rock was closer than I thought. I didn't move right away. The wind cut across the ridge, colder now, sharper, like the mountain had decided we didn't belong here after all. The last light of day stretched thin across the rocks, turning everything gray and flat. Atlas stood frozen near the edge of the rockfall, his body angled toward that same spot where the cliff met the debris. His ears were forward, but locked in. His breathing was steady. Mine wasn't. "Atlas," I called out quietly. He didn't come. Didn't even look away. That wasn't like him. A flicker of unease crept in. I stepped toward him, boots crunching over loose gravel. Each step felt heavier than the last, like something in me was starting to shut down. The cold had sunk in deeper than I realized. My fingers were numb, my jaw was tight, and my thoughts, they were starting to slip. "You find something?" I asked, forcing a bit of strength into my voice. Atlas shifted slightly, but didn't leave his position. His nose lowered again, brushing along the ground, then up toward a cluster of tangled vines and broken rock pressed against the cliff wall. I followed his line of sight. Nothing. Just stone. Dirt. A dead ivy clinging to the surface like it had been there for decades. "Yeah," I muttered. "Looks real promising." The sarcasm didn't land. Not even for me. A gust of wind hit hard enough to make me stagger half a step. My vision blurred for a second, then sharpened again. Then blurred. I blinked. Hard. The ground tilted slightly under my feet. "Not now," I whispered. My legs felt weak. Too weak. I took another step and felt it slip under me. My boot slid on loose gravel, and I dropped to one knee, catching myself with a hand against the rock. Cold. So cold, it burned. "Damn it!" I hissed. Atlas was at my side in an instant. He pressed against me, solid, warm, real. Yeah, I'm good," I said, though my voice didn't sound right. Too slow, too far away. I pushed myself back up, but the effort sent a wave through me. Dizziness, sharp and sudden. The kind that doesn't ask permission. It just takes over. For a second. The mountain disappeared. I was back there again. Heat, noise, sand grinding into my teeth. A voice shouting over everything else. "Pierce! Stay with me!" My chest tightened. My hands shook. The rock under my palm wasn't rock anymore. It was metal, hot, vibrating. Something was coming. I blinked, hard. The forest snapped back. Cold air slammed into my lungs. I gasped. Atlas barked once, sharp, urgent. "I'm here," I said quickly, grabbing onto his collar just to feel something solid. "I'm here." He didn't calm down. Not yet. He circled slightly, then pressed into me again, forcing me to stay upright. Grounding. Always grounding. I swallowed, forcing my breathing to slow. "In, out," I muttered. "Just breathe." It took longer than I wanted to admit. But eventually, the shaking eased. The world stopped tilting. The sounds in my head faded back into silence. I leaned back against the rock, closing my eyes for just a second. Just a second. The cold seeped deeper. Through the jacket, through the layers, straight into bone. "You're not making it through the night like this," I muttered to myself. It wasn't fear, it was fact. The temperature was dropping fast. The sun was almost gone. And this place, this useless, worthless pile of rock, had nothing. No shelter, no cover, no firewood that wasn't soaked or buried. I looked down at Atlas. He was watching me now. Really watching. Like he understood more than I was saying. Yeah, I said quietly. Oh, not exactly the jackpot. My lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. Could have had a hot meal right now. The thought hit harder than I expected. Warm food, a chair, 4 walls. Instead, I was here. Freezing, shaking, holding on to the last thing I had for no reason I could explain. You messed this one up, Logan, I said under my breath. Atlas nudged my hand. I let it rest on his head. For a moment, neither of us moved. The wind howled across the ridge. The light faded. And the silence pressed in heavier than before. I pushed myself off the rock with effort, forcing my legs to hold. All right, I said, voice low. We find anything that blocks the wind, even a little. Atlas didn't move. I frowned. Come on. Still nothing. He turned his head slightly, back toward that same spot, at that same cluster of vines, that same section of rock. His body tensed again. Different this time. Focused. Intent. Then he moved. Not away. Forward. He stepped into the narrow gap where the rockfall met the cliff, pushing through the thick, dead ivy like it wasn't even there. Atlas, I started. He didn't stop. The vines rustled as he pushed deeper, paws scraping against stone. Then, a sharp yelp. I froze. Atlas! I moved fast, too fast for my balance to keep up. My foot slipped again, but I caught myself, grabbing onto the rock as I forced my way toward him. The vines were thicker than they looked, tangled and brittle, snapping under my hands as I pushed through. Atlas, where are you? Another sound. Not a yelp this time. A low, strained whine. My chest tightened as I shoved the last of the ivy aside and stepped into the narrow space beyond. And stopped. Atlas was there, just ahead of me. One paw raised slightly. Blood. Not a lot, but enough. A jagged piece of rock had sliced into his paw as he forced his way in. Hey, hey, I said quickly, dropping to one knee beside him. Easy, easy. He didn't pull away, didn't whine again. Just stood there, breathing steady, eyes locked on me. I took his paw gently, inspecting it. Damn it, I muttered. You don't quit, do you? The cut wasn't deep, but it hurt. I could see it in the way he shifted his weight. You could have waited, I said softly. He didn't respond. Of course he didn't. Instead, he turned his head again, back toward the rock, back toward something I still couldn't see. I followed his gaze. Closer now, closer than before. The air shifted, just slightly. I felt it against my face. Not wind, not cold. Something else. Warmer. I frowned. No way, I leaned forward, pressing my hand against the rock surface just beyond the vines. Cold. Then, a faint gap. So small I almost missed it. My fingers traced along the edge. Uneven. Not natural. Like something had been sealed, not just buried. My pulse picked up. Atlas, I whispered. He stepped forward again despite the pain, pressing his nose toward the gap, breathing in, focused, certain. I swallowed. The doubt, the exhaustion, the regret. For the first time since I got here, they cracked, just a little. This isn't just rock, I said quietly. My voice sounded different now, not tired, not defeated, something else. I pushed harder against the vines, clearing more of the space. As more of the gap revealed itself, still small, still blocked. But there, real, hidden, buried on purpose. I looked down at Atlas. His paw was bleeding. He was hurt. And still, he hadn't stopped. "All right," I said, a new edge creeping into my voice. "You were right." He didn't need the words. He already knew. I stood slowly, ignoring the ache in my body, the cold biting into my skin, the exhaustion clawing at the edges of my mind. Because something had just changed. Not outside. Inside. That feeling from earlier. The one that whispered, "Don't." It was gone. Replaced by something sharper. Clearer. "If there's a way in," I said, eyes fixed on the rock, "we're going to find it." The mountain didn't answer. But it didn't feel empty anymore. And for the first time since midnight, I wasn't just trying to survive the night. I was trying to uncover something. Something that didn't want to be found. And now, neither did I. The cold didn't matter anymore. Not the way it had a few minutes ago. Not the way it had been creeping into my bones, slowing me down, dragging my thoughts into that dangerous place between exhaustion and memory. Now there was something else. Focus. Sharp. Clear. Almost unfamiliar. I crouched closer to the gap, brushing away more of the dead vines with numb fingers. The brittle stems snapped easily, revealing more of the rock beneath. Dark, uneven, but not solid the way it should have been. There was space there. Not much, but enough to feel, enough to breathe through. Atlas shifted beside me, favoring his injured paw but refusing to stay still, with his nose pressed close to the opening, inhaling slowly, deeply, like he was pulling information out of the air. "What do you smell?" I asked quietly. He didn't look at me. Didn't need to. His body answered for him, alert, locked in, certain. I leaned closer, pressing my face near the gap. At first, all I felt was cold air brushing against my skin. Then, something else, a faint current, warmer, not by much, but enough to notice, enough to feel wrong. "This isn't just a cave-in," I whispered. My hand slid along the edge again, tracing the uneven line. The rock wasn't random. It wasn't just fallen debris. It had been sealed, or at least forced shut in a way that didn't match the rest of the mountain. Atlas suddenly pawed at the ground again, scraping through dirt and small stones with urgency, and his injured paw left faint streaks of blood on the surface, but he didn't slow down. "Hey, easy," I said, reaching for him. He ignored me, dug harder, faster, like time mattered, like whatever was behind that rock wasn't supposed to stay hidden forever. All right, I muttered, shifting closer. "Let me help." I grabbed a loose piece of stone and started clearing debris alongside him, pushing smaller rocks away, breaking apart compacted dirt with whatever strength I had left. The effort burned. My arms shook, my breath came fast and uneven. But I didn't stop, because for the first time since I stepped onto this mountain, this didn't feel like a mistake. Minutes passed, or maybe longer. Time blurred into the rhythm of movement. Scrape, push, break, clear. Atlas kept going, relentless, and his breathing heavier now, but his focus never breaking. Then, a hollow sound. I froze. My hand hovered over the rock I'd just struck. That wasn't solid. I hit it again. A dull, empty echo answered. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Atlas stopped instantly, ears snapping forward. I hit the same spot again. Hollow, definitely hollow. My pulse kicked up. "Okay," I breathed. "Okay, that's something." I cleared more of the surrounding debris, exposing a flatter surface beneath the outer layer of rock. It wasn't natural. The texture was different, smoother in places, angled, engineered, buried. Atlas, this isn't just a cave. He stepped closer, nose brushing the surface, then moved slightly to the side, sniffing along the edge. Guiding. Always guiding. I followed him. A narrow seam revealed itself, thin, much barely visible unless you knew where to look. My fingers traced along it, feeling the subtle break between two surfaces, a door, or something close to it. Whoever did this didn't want anyone finding it, I murmured. The thought should have scared me. It didn't. Not anymore. Because something deeper had already taken hold. Curiosity, no. Not just curiosity. Recognition. That same instinct that had kept me alive before. The one that said this matters. Atlas suddenly stiffened. Not at the rock. Behind us. His head snapped toward the ridge, his body lowered slightly, alert, listening. I turned slowly, scanning the clearing beyond the vines. Nothing. Just the fading light. The wind, the empty stretch of rock and trees. But the silence. It felt different now, thicker, heavier. "Hey," I said softly. "Oh, what is it?" Atlas didn't move, didn't relax, just watched. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. Then, the wind shifted. A low sound carried through it. Faint, distant, like something moving far off beyond the ridge. I held my breath, listened. It came again. Soft. Unclear. Could have been anything. Could have been nothing. But Atlas didn't believe that. And neither did I. "We're not alone out here," I said quietly. The words settled heavy in the air. Not panic, not fear, just awareness. I turned back to the rock, back to the seam, back to the thing hidden beneath all of this. If someone else knows about this, I didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Atlas shifted closer to me, positioning himself between me and the open ridge. Protective. Always. But I placed my hand flat against the surface again, feeling the faint vibration of something beyond it. Or maybe that was just my pulse. Either way, this wasn't over. Not even close. "We need a way in," I said, more to myself than to him. The cold crept back in around the edges. The exhaustion followed. But it couldn't push through the focus now. Not anymore. Because whatever was behind that wall was real. And Atlas knew it. He looked up at me, eyes steady, unshaken, despite the blood on his paw, despite the cold, despite everything. Like he'd made the decision already. We weren't leaving. Not tonight. Not without answers. I exhaled slowly. "All right," I said. My voice was quieter now, but stronger. "Then we keep going." The mountain stayed silent, but the feeling was gone. That emptiness, that doubt, but replaced by something else, something buried, something waiting. And we had just started to uncover it. The light was almost gone. What little sun remained clung to the far edge of the ridge, bleeding out behind the mountains like it didn't want to stay either. Shadows stretched long across the rockfall, swallowing the narrow space where Atlas and I stood. Night was coming fast. Too fast. I glanced up at the sky, then back at the seam in the rock. "We don't have much time," I said quietly. Atlas didn't look away from the wall. Neither did I. Because now that we knew something was there, walking away felt impossible, even if staying meant risking everything. I shifted my weight, ignoring the ache in my legs, and grabbed a larger chunk of stone wedged near the edge of the seam. "Help me out here," I muttered, and Atlas stepped back slightly as I worked the rock loose, pushing with what strength I had left. The stone resisted at first, then shifted just enough to break free. It dropped with a dull thud, echoing. Not outside. Inside. I froze. That sound, it carried inward, deep, like it had somewhere to go. My pulse quickened. "That's not just a crack," I whispered. Atlas stepped forward again, nose pressing into the gap, breathing faster now. Urgent. Certain. I shoved more debris aside, hands moving faster, more desperate. The opening widened inch by inch, revealing darkness beyond. Not natural darkness, not the kind you get from shadows. This was deeper, still, sealed, like it had been waiting. A cold chill ran down my spine, not from the wind, from something else. "Who built this?" I murmured. The question hung in the air, unanswered. Atlas pushed forward again, ignoring the tight space, squeezing his way into the narrow opening. The jagged rock scraped against his sides, and his injured paw slipped slightly on loose gravel. "Hey, careful," I said quickly. He didn't stop, didn't even hesitate. He was already halfway inside. "Atlas!" I dropped to my knees and followed, forcing my way through the gap. The rock tore at my jacket, caught against my shoulders, resisted like it didn't want to let me pass. For a second, I was stuck. The pressure closed in. Tight. Too tight. My breath hitched. The walls were too close. Too much like... I blinked hard. "No, not here. Not now." "Move," I muttered to myself. I exhaled slowly, twisting my body just enough to slide through. Then, I was inside. A darkness swallowed everything. Complete. Absolute. I couldn't see my own hands. "Atlas?" I called out softly. A faint sound answered. His breathing. Close. I reached forward and felt his fur under my fingers. Solid. Real. Still here. "Good," I whispered. I pulled my small flashlight from my bag, hands shaking slightly as I flicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness and stopped. Not far. Maybe 10 feet ahead. The space was narrow, jagged, uneven. The walls were rough stone, but not entirely natural. There were marks, scrapes, lines, edges that didn't belong. This wasn't just a cave. It was something altered, something shaped. "Stay close," I said. Atlas moved ahead, slower now, careful with his steps. His ears stayed forward, body low, every movement controlled. We moved deeper, step by step. The air changed again. Warmer, stiller, heavier. The sound of the wind outside faded, replaced by something else, silence. Thick, pressing. The kind that makes your ears ring. I swallowed. "This isn't right," I said under my breath. The tunnel angled downward, subtle at first, then more noticeable. Loose stones shifted underfoot. The ground felt unstable, like it hadn't been touched in years. Or maybe it had. Recently. The thought stopped me cold. "Atlas!" He paused ahead, looked back. Then, a low rumble. It came from above. Deep. Shifting. I didn't have time to think. "Move!" I shouted. Atlas lunged forward. I followed. But the ground gave way. The rock beneath my foot cracked, then collapsed entirely. The world dropped out from under me. I reached for something, anything. My fingers caught air. Then, impact. Hard. The breath was knocked out of me as I slammed into something solid, rolling once, twice before coming to a stop. Pain flared through my side, sharp, blinding. I gasped, struggling to pull air back into my lungs. For a moment, there was nothing. No sound. No movement. Just darkness. Then, a faint whine. "Atlas!" I croaked. No answer. My heart pounded. "Atlas!" I forced myself up, ignoring the pain, fumbling for the flashlight. It had slipped from my hand during the fall, landing somewhere nearby. My fingers brushed against it. I grabbed it, flicked it on. The beam shook as it cut through the darkness. "Atlas!" He was there, a few feet away, on his side. Not moving. My chest tightened. "No, no, no!" I crawled toward him, the ground uneven beneath me, at every movement sending sharp pain through my ribs. "Atlas, come on!" I said, reaching him, hands shaking as I touched his side. "Come on, buddy, don't do this!" For a second, nothing. Then, a breath. Shallow. But there. Relief hit so hard it almost knocked me over again. "Hey, hey," I whispered, brushing a hand over his neck. "You're all right. You're all right." His eyes flickered open. Slow. Unfocused at first. Then they found me. And held. Alive. Still with me. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Yeah," I said softly. "We're still in this." He tried to move, but a low whine escaped him. "Easy," I said quickly. "Don't rush it." I scanned him with the light. More blood on his paw. A scrape along his side. But nothing worse, nothing broken. He was hurt. But he was here. Still fighting, always. I sat back slightly, leaning against the cold rock. The reality of what just happened settling in. We had fallen. Not far enough to kill us, but far enough. Far enough that the way back might not be there anymore. I raised the flashlight, sweeping the beam upward. The opening we came through was gone. Collapsed. Buried under fresh rock. My stomach tightened. "We're not getting out that way," I said quietly. Atlas didn't react. He already knew. I lowered the light, turning it forward. The beam stretched into darkness. Deeper. Farther. And then, something caught it. Not rock. Not dirt. Straight lines. Edges. A surface that didn't belong in a natural cave. My breath slowed. "What is that?" I pushed myself to my feet, ignoring the pain, and took a step forward. Then another. The light steadied, revealing more. One metal. Faded. Partially buried. A wall. Flat. Constructed. My pulse kicked up again. "Atlas!" He pushed himself up beside me, slower now, but determined. We stood there together, staring into the darkness ahead, at something that shouldn't exist out here. Something hidden. Something sealed. Something waiting. And whatever we had just fallen into wasn't a cave at all. The beam of my flashlight trembled slightly as I held it steady. Metal. Not rusted scrap, not debris dragged in by time. This was a wall. Flat. Reinforced. Built. Buried under a mountain, like it had never been meant to see daylight again. I took a slow step forward, boots crunching lightly against gravel that didn't quite belong here. The ground beneath us had changed. Less natural. More compact. Structured. "Stay with me," I said quietly. Atlas moved beside me, limping just enough to remind me he was hurt, but not enough to slow him down. His ears were forward, body tense, eyes scanning everything the light touched, and everything it didn't. We approached the wall. Up close. It was clearer. Steel panels darkened with age, scratched in places but still intact. Rivets lined the seams. Faint markings. Numbers, maybe. Barely visible beneath layers of dust and time. "This is military," I whispered. The words came out before I could stop them, because I knew that look, that feel. I'd seen structures like this before. Not exactly like this, but close enough. Built to last. Built to stay hidden. Built to protect something. Or someone. Atlas moved ahead, nose brushing along the base of the wall, sniffing carefully. He paused near a section where the metal met stone, and then shifted slightly to the right. I followed. "There's got to be a way in," I muttered. The flashlight swept across the surface again. Then, there. A break in the pattern. Subtle. Almost invisible unless you were looking for it. A seam. Vertical. I stepped closer, brushing away dirt with my hand. The outline of a door revealed itself slowly, like it had been waiting to be noticed. "Found you," I whispered. Atlas gave a low, quiet sound. Approval, maybe. Or warning. I reached out, placing my palm flat against the cold metal. Nothing happened. No sound. No movement. "Figures," I said under my breath. I ran my fingers along the edge, searching for anything. Handle, latch, keypad. Nothing obvious. But then, a small panel, set slightly into the wall, half covered in grime. I wiped it clean with my sleeve. Buttons. Are old, faded, but still there. A keypad. I stared at it for a long moment. No way this still works. The thought felt ridiculous. Everything about this place did. And yet, we were standing here. I pressed one of the buttons. Nothing. No sound. No light. Dead. "Yeah," I muttered. "Didn't think it'd be that easy." Atlas shifted beside me, suddenly tense again. I looked down at him. "What?" He wasn't looking at the keypad. He was looking at the door. Specifically, the bottom edge. I followed his gaze. The flashlight beam dropped lower, and there it was. A faint gap, barely noticeable, but real. Air moved through it. Warm. Steady. I froze. That's not possible. A structure buried under tons of rock, sealed for years, maybe decades, and there was still air moving inside. My pulse quickened. Something in there is still active. Atlas let out a low sound. Not fear. Not exactly. Awareness. I stepped back slightly, scanning the door again. If the keypad's dead, I glanced at the seam, then at the surrounding rock, then back at the panel. There has to be a manual release. The words came from instinct, training, the kind that doesn't fade no matter how much you try to leave it behind. I moved along the edge, fingers tracing every inch of metal, searching, feeling, looking for something out of place, something hidden. Atlas stayed close, his body angled slightly outward, guarding the space behind us. Always watching. Always ready. My hand brushed against something. A slight indentation. Different from the rest. I pressed. Nothing. I pressed harder. Still nothing. "Come on," I muttered, but I shifted my grip, pushing from a different angle. A click. Soft. Almost too quiet to hear. but I felt it. The mechanism inside the wall shifted, old, reluctant, but alive. Atlas's head snapped up. My breath caught. The door didn't open right away. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a low hum. Deep, distant, like something waking up far below us. I stepped back instinctively. What did I just turn on? The sound grew slightly louder, vibrating through the metal, through the ground beneath my feet. Then, a sharp hiss. The seam in the door split open just enough to let a thin line of light escape. Not natural light. Artificial. Cold. Steady. Alive. My heart pounded. No way! The door shifted slowly, inch by inch, grinding against itself like it hadn't moved in years. Dust fell from the edges. 2 small stones rolled away. And then, it opened. Not all the way. Just enough. A narrow gap. Wide enough to see inside. I raised the flashlight instinctively, then lowered it. I didn't need it anymore. Because inside, there was light. Dim. Flickering slightly. But real. Rows of metal walls stretched inward, forming a corridor that disappeared into the distance. The floor was solid, clean compared to the cave outside. Wires ran along the ceiling. Old fixtures hung in place, and somewhere deeper inside, that hum continued. Steady. Alive. Atlas stepped forward slightly, peering into the opening, then stopped. His body tensed. I felt it too. That shift in the air. The kind that tells you, you've just crossed a line. There's power in there, I said quietly. My voice echoed slightly against the walls. Contained, uncontrolled, nothing like the open mountain behind us. This place, it's still running. The realization settled deep, heavy. Whatever this was, it hadn't been abandoned, not completely. Atlas looked up at me, waiting, not afraid, just ready, like always. I exhaled slowly. All right, I said. My voice was steady now, different from before, stronger, because this wasn't just survival anymore. This was something else. Discovery, truth, maybe even something bigger. I stepped closer to the opening. The light inside flickered once, then steadied, and for a brief second, I thought I saw something move. Far down the corridor, a shadow, gone before I could focus. My grip tightened on the flashlight. Did you see that? Atlas didn't answer. He was already stepping forward, into the light, into the unknown. And for the first time since we arrived on that mountain, I wasn't following blindly. I was choosing to go in. Because whatever this place was, it had been waiting. And now, it was finally open. I didn't step in right away. The light inside flickered once more, then steadied again, casting long shadows down the corridor, like something was breathing behind the walls. Atlas had already crossed the threshold. He stood just inside, his body low, head slightly forward, ears locked in place. Not afraid, alert, waiting for me. Yeah, I muttered under my breath. Guess we're doing this. I stepped through the opening. The moment I crossed inside, the air changed completely. Warmer, still, controlled. The mountain was gone, replaced by something sealed, contained, unnatural in its quiet. The door behind me groaned softly, and I turned just in time to see it shift again, closing a few inches before stopping. Not sealing us in, but reminding me, this place had rules, and we were inside them now. I swallowed and turned back. The corridor stretched ahead, lined with metal walls that showed their age in scratches and faded paint. Old conduits ran along the ceiling. A few dim lights flickered overhead, powered by something still couldn't understand. This shouldn't be working, I whispered. Atlas moved slowly ahead, every step measured. His injured paw touched down carefully, but he didn't stop. His eyes scanned the space ahead, reading it in ways I couldn't. We walked forward. Each step echoed softly against the floor, contained, muted. Like the place absorbed sound instead of carrying it. We passed the first door on the right, closed. The number faded. The second one was slightly open. I hesitated, then pushed it wider. The hinges creaked. Inside, a room. Small. Metal shelves lined the walls. Dust covered everything, but not thick enough to suggest complete abandonment. I stepped inside. My light swept across the shelves. Boxes, labeled, sealed, military-style storage. Atlas stayed at the doorway, watching the corridor. Guarding. Always guarding. I reached for one of the boxes, brushing dust off the top. The label was worn, but still readable. Water filtration components. My hand froze. Water? I set the box down slowly. There were more. Stacked. Organized. Equipment. Tools. Supplies. This wasn't just a bunker. It was a facility. Built for a purpose. And that purpose was starting to come into focus. I stepped back into the corridor. Oh, Atlas. Something's off. He didn't respond, but he moved forward again. Deeper. We passed more rooms, some empty, some filled with equipment, medical supplies, generators, old control panels that still hummed faintly under the surface. Nothing made sense. And yet, everything felt connected, like pieces of something I couldn't see yet. Then we reached the end of the corridor. A larger door, different from the others, heavier, marked. The paint was faded, but the symbol beneath it was still visible. Government issue. Old, but official. My chest tightened. I've seen this before. Not here. Not this place, but something like it. A memory stirred, half-buried, sharp, unwelcome. Atlas sat down beside me, waiting. I reached for the handle, paused. My hand hovered in the air. Because suddenly, I wasn't just standing in a hallway. I was somewhere else. Heat, noise, the metallic taste of fear. A canteen in my hand. Water. Clear. Safe. Or so we thought. The memory hit hard. Too fast. Too real. I staggered slightly, grabbing onto the wall. Not now, I whispered. Atlas was up instantly, pressing against my leg, grounding me, pulling me back. I forced air into my lungs, focused on the present, on the door, on the here and now. I'm okay, I said quietly, more to him than to myself. My hand steadied. I grabbed the handle and pulled. The door opened with a low, heavy sound. Inside. A larger room, dimly lit. Rows of desks, old monitors, files scattered across surfaces like someone had left in a hurry, or never came back at all. The hum was louder here, when coming from somewhere deeper. I stepped inside slowly. Atlas followed, staying close. The air felt heavier, thicker, like it carried something unseen. I moved to the nearest desk. Papers, faded, some crumpled, some neatly stacked. I picked one up. The words blurred at first, then sharpened. Report. Water contamination analysis. My grip tightened. No. I flipped to the next page. More reports. More data. Dates, locations. All tied to the same region. This region. My pulse began to race. Atlas! My voice sounded distant, like it wasn't fully mine. I grabbed another file, this one thicker, marked confidential. My hands shook slightly as I opened it. Inside, names, units, deployment zones. My eyes scanned the page, and then they stopped. A name, one I knew too well. My breath caught. That's not possible. I turned the page. More names, more units, more reports, all connected, all tied to something that had been hidden, buried, covered up. The room seemed to close in around me, because suddenly, this wasn't just some abandoned facility. This wasn't just a hidden bunker. This was something else, something personal, something that reached back into a past I had tried to bury. The memory slammed into me. Clear, unavoidable. Men coughing, water bottles half empty, a medic shouting for more supplies that never came, and me, standing there, watching it happen. Not understanding why, not knowing the truth. Until now. My hand tightened around the file. They knew, I whispered. The words felt like they cut on the way out. They knew, and they let it happen. Atlas stood beside me, silent, steady, present. I looked down at him, then back at the files, at the evidence, at the truth buried beneath all that rock. This wasn't just about money, I said quietly. This wasn't just about land. I swallowed hard, because now I understood why Marcus Vane wanted this place, why he showed up so fast, why Atlas reacted the way he did. This is bigger than we thought. The weight of it settled in, heavy, unavoidable. This place didn't just hold secrets. It held answers about what happened, about who was responsible, about everything that had never made sense. I closed the file slowly, my hands steadier now. Not because I felt better, because something had changed inside me. The confusion, the doubt, the fear. It was still there. But underneath it, something else had taken its place. Clarity. Cold. Sharp. They buried this, I said. My voice was different now, lower, controlled. They buried all of it. Atlas looked up at me, and for the first time since we entered this place, I wasn't just trying to survive. I wasn't just trying to understand. I knew what this was, and I knew what it meant. I looked back at the files, at the truth, at the names, and one thought settled in, clear and undeniable. This place wasn't just hidden to protect something. It was hidden to make sure no one like me ever found it. But now, I had, and everything was about to change. For a long moment, I didn't move. The file was still in my hands, the paper slightly crumpled from how tight my grip had become. The room felt smaller now, not physically, but mentally, like the walls had shifted closer the moment the truth settled in. They knew, I said again, quieter this time. Not disbelief anymore, confirmation. Atlas stood beside me, still as stone, his presence steady and grounding in a way nothing else could be. His injured paw rested lightly against the floor, but his posture hadn't changed. Alert. Ready. Always ready. I exhaled slowly and set the file down. Carefully. Like it mattered. Because it did. Everything in this room mattered now. I turned, scanning the space with a different set of eyes. Not as someone lost, not as someone desperate, but as someone who understood exactly what he was standing in. This isn't just evidence, I muttered. It's leverage. The word felt strange in my mouth. Cold. Calculated. But right. I moved deeper into the room, pulling open drawers, scanning shelves, gathering everything that looked important. But more files, hard drives, Storage units sealed in protective cases. They weren't just records, they were proof, systematic, organized, detailed enough to destroy someone. Atlas shifted slightly, his head turning toward the corridor. I paused. What is it? He didn't bark, didn't move, just watched, listening. The silence in the bunker wasn't empty anymore. It felt aware, like something beyond us had started paying attention. I grabbed one of the storage cases and slipped it into my bag, then another. We don't have time to sort through all of this, I said quietly. We take what we can. Atlas didn't argue. He stayed near the doorway, guarding the entrance, his body angled outward, protecting. Always protecting. I moved faster now, adrenaline pushing past the exhaustion, past the pain in my ribs, past the cold that had settled into my bones hours ago. Because this changed everything. The worthless cave, the sealed mountain, Marcus Vane showing up too quickly, too eager, too desperate. It all fit now. He wasn't trying to buy land, I said. He was trying to bury this. The realization hit harder than anything else, because it meant one thing. He knew, and if he knew, then he wasn't done. Atlas let out a low sound. Warning. I froze. Then I heard it. Faint. Distant. But unmistakable. A vibration. Not from the bunker. From outside. My eyes snapped toward the corridor. No! I moved quickly, stepping out into the hallway, my boots hitting the metal floor with sharper echoes now. The hum was still there. Steady, but layered beneath it. Something new, a distant mechanical sound. When I reached the end of the corridor and looked back toward the entrance, nothing. Just the faint glow from the partially closed door. But the feeling, it was back. That same feeling from the ridge, the one Atlas had sensed first. They're here, I said quietly. Not a question. A fact. Atlas stepped beside me, his body tense, ears locked forward. I turned back into the room and grabbed the rest of the files I could carry, stuffing them into my bag without hesitation. We don't run, I said. The words surprised even me, because a few hours ago, that's exactly what I would have done. Walk away, avoid it, survive, but not anymore. Not after what I'd just seen, not after what I now knew. They don't get to bury this again. My voice was steady, cold, different, when I slung the bag over my shoulder and stepped back into the corridor. Atlas moved with me, matching my pace, his presence at my side stronger than ever, despite the blood on his paw. We reached the door, the narrow opening that led back to the cave, to the mountain, to whoever was out there. I stopped just short of stepping through. All right, I said quietly. We do this smart. Atlas looked up at me, waiting, trusting. I crouched slightly, placing a hand on his neck. You stay close. You see anything? I don't care what it is. You move. He didn't blink, didn't hesitate. He understood. Always did. I stood back up slowly and stepped toward the opening. The cold air hit immediately, sharp, real. The mountain hadn't changed, but something else had. The silence was gone and replaced by a distant sound that didn't belong out here. Engines. Low. Faint. But getting closer. I stepped out onto the rock, scanning the ridge. Nothing visible yet. But I knew. They're coming for it, I said. Atlas moved slightly ahead, positioning himself just in front of me, his body angled outward, ready. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the old phone I'd been carrying. No signal. Of course, didn't matter. Because this wasn't about calling for help anymore. This was about control. And for the first time since I walked out of that center, I had it. They think I'm still the guy who'd sell this for a few $1,000s, I said quietly. A faint, humorless smile touched my lips. They don't know me at all. The wind picked up again, carrying the sound of engines closer now. Not loud, not obvious. But enough. Enough for Atlas to hear. Enough for me to feel. I adjusted the strap of my bag, the weight of the truth inside it settling against my back. Heavy, important, dangerous. Let them come, I said. My voice didn't shake, didn't falter, because the man who had walked up this mountain, cold, lost, broken, he wasn't standing here anymore. Something else was, something sharper, more focused, more dangerous. And this time, I wasn't the one being hunted. I was the one waiting. The engines got louder, still distant enough to hide behind the wind, but no longer something you could mistake for anything else. Tires on rough terrain, low gears grinding their way up a road that barely qualified as one. They knew exactly where to go. That told me everything I needed to know. They've been here before, I said quietly, as Atlas stood beside me, his body rigid, eyes fixed toward the lower ridge where the sound was coming from. His breathing had slowed, not calm, but controlled, focused, the same way he used to get before something went wrong, before something exploded. I scanned the terrain, the clearing, the broken rock, the narrow approach path that twisted up through the trees. There weren't many ways in, which meant there weren't many ways out either. All right, I muttered. We don't fight this head on. Atlas flicked an ear, listening, waiting. I stepped back toward the cave entrance, the hidden door now partially closed behind us, blending almost seamlessly into the rock again. Good. Let it stay hidden. For now. I crouched down, brushing loose gravel over some of the disturbed ground near the opening, was masking the signs we had just come through. Make it look untouched, I whispered. Atlas moved slightly to the side, giving me space, but his eyes never left the ridge. The engines grew louder, closer, too close now. I stood slowly, adjusting the strap of my bag, the weight of everything inside it pressed against my back. Evidence. Truth. Leverage. This ends tonight, I said quietly. Not as a threat, as a decision. I looked down at Atlas. You ready? He didn't hesitate, didn't blink. He was already there. We moved together, stepping away from the cave and into the shadows of the rockfall, positioning ourselves where we could see without being seen. The light had fully faded now. Night had taken over. The only illumination came from the faint glow of the sky and headlights, 2 sets. 2, but cutting through the trees below. They climbed slowly, carefully, like whoever was driving knew the terrain well enough not to rush. Professional. Calculated. I crouched lower, steadying my breathing. Marcus doesn't come alone, I whispered. Atlas shifted slightly, tension building. The vehicles reached the clearing. Engines cut. Silence returned. But it wasn't empty anymore. Doors opened. Footsteps. Multiple. I counted at least 4, maybe more. Shadows moved across the rock, long and distorted under the headlights. Then, a voice. Calm. Controlled. Familiar. You should have taken the deal, Logan. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear. Recognition. Marcus Vane stepped into the light, his coat pulled tight against the cold, his posture relaxed like he was standing in his own backyard, and like this mountain belonged to him. "I was hoping you'd make this easier," he continued. "But I suppose you've always had a habit of choosing the hard way." I didn't move, didn't answer. Atlas stayed perfectly still beside me, waiting. Marcus glanced around the clearing slowly, taking it in, reading it. "You're here," he said. "I know you are." A pause, then a faint smile. "Your dog gave it away earlier." My grip tightened. Atlas didn't react, didn't break. But something inside me sharpened. He knew. Not everything, but enough. "Come out," Marcus called. "We can still make a deal." Silence. The kind that stretches, tests. I exhaled slowly, then stood, stepping out from the shadows. "I'm done making deals," I said. My voice carried across the clearing, steady, controlled. Marcus's smile widened slightly. "There you are." His eyes dropped briefly to my bag, then back to me. "You found it." Not a question, a confirmation. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. The men behind him shifted slightly, positioning, watching, waiting for orders. Marcus took a step forward. "Do you have any idea what you're holding?" he asked. I met his gaze. "Yeah," I said. "I do." The wind cut between us, cold, sharp. "You're not walking off this mountain with it," he said calmly. "No," I replied. "You're not." Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement. Then I saw it. A subtle shift. One of the men behind him moving slightly to the side. Too quiet. Too smooth. Flanking. Atlas saw it before I did. A low growl rumbled from his chest. "Stay," I started. Too late. The man lunged forward from the side, moving fast, but reaching for me. And Atlas moved faster. He launched himself forward, intercepting the attack mid-motion, knocking the man off balance and sending him crashing into the rocks. A sharp cry, a struggle. Atlas held him down, teeth bared, his injured paw digging into the ground as he refused to give up position. "Atlas!" I shouted. The other men moved instantly, weapons raised. "Stand down!" Marcus snapped. They froze. Tension snapped tight across the clearing. Marcus raised a hand slowly. "Call him off," he said. I didn't look at him. I looked at Atlas. His body tense, his breathing heavy. But his eyes, still locked, still in control. "Easy," I said. "Slow, steady. Let him go." A second passed, then another. Atlas released the man, but didn't step away, didn't lower his guard. He stayed between me and them, and always between. The man scrambled back, shaken, clutching his side. Marcus watched it all with a slight tilt of his head. "Impressive," he said quietly. "Loyal, too." I didn't respond, because my focus had shifted. The sound, behind us, faint at first, then clear. Another set of engines, closer, faster. Marcus heard it too. His expression changed, subtle, but real. "What did you do?" he asked. I met his gaze. "Something you should have done a long time ago." The sound grew louder. Headlights cut through the trees from a different direction. Multiple vehicles, not his. The clearing filled with movement. Voices, commands. "Federal agents! Nobody move!" Everything exploded into motion. Marcus's men froze, weapons lowered, hands raised. Lights flooded the clearing, red and blue flashing against the rock, as against the mountain, against the truth that had been buried here for too long. Marcus didn't move, didn't run. He just looked at me. A long, steady look. "You think this ends it?" he said quietly. I stepped closer. "No," I said. "This is where it starts." Atlas stood beside me, breathing heavy, his body still tense but unshaken. Alive. Still fighting. Always. The agents moved in, securing the area, taking control, pulling Marcus's men away one by one. Marcus was the last. As they placed him in cuffs, he didn't resist. He just kept his eyes on me, like he was trying to figure something out, something he missed, something he didn't understand. Maybe he never would, because he didn't see what I saw. He didn't feel what I felt. He didn't go through what we went through. He didn't have him. I looked down at Atlas. Had blood on his paw, scratches along his side. Still standing. Still here. "You did good," I said quietly. He didn't need the praise, but I gave it anyway, because without him, none of this would have happened. None of this would have been found. None of this would have ended. The mountain stood silent behind us, but it wasn't hiding anything anymore, and for the first time since I stepped onto it, the truth was finally out. The mountain felt different in the morning. Same wind, same cold air brushing across the ridge, same endless stretch of rock and trees. But the silence, it wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't hiding anything. It was just quiet. I stood at the edge of the clearing, watching as the last of the federal vehicles disappeared down the narrow road. The flashing lights were gone now. The voices, the tension, and all of it. Gone. Like it had never been there. Except it had. And everything had changed because of it. Behind me, the entrance to the bunker was now secured, marked, guarded. What had been buried for years, maybe decades, was no longer hidden. Teams would come. Investigations would follow. Names would be uncovered. Truth would spread. Slowly, but surely. I let out a breath and looked down. Atlas sat beside me. Still. Calm. His paw had been bandaged, the white wrap standing out against his dark fur. There were a few more marks along his side, cleaned and treated, but nothing that would keep him down. Nothing ever did. "You're supposed to take it easy," I said quietly. He didn't move, didn't react, just stayed there, watching the horizon. Same as me. I crouched down beside him, resting a hand gently against his neck. "You saved me again," I said. The words came easier now. Not heavy, not broken. Just true. He leaned into the touch slightly. That was enough. It always was. I stood back up slowly, my body still sore, ribs reminding me of the fall, muscles reminding me of the climb. But it was different now. The pain didn't define me. It didn't control me. It just existed. And for once, that was okay. A vehicle approached from behind, slower this time, familiar. I turned as it came to a stop a few yards away. Rachel Turner stepped out, closing the door behind her as she walked toward me, a folder in her hand and a look in her eyes that said everything had already begun moving. "It's bigger than we thought," she said. I gave a small nod. "I figured." She glanced toward the secured entrance. "They're already pulling records. Financial trails, corporate ties. It's going to reach a lot of people." "Good," I said. She studied me for a moment. "You don't sound surprised." "I'm not," I replied, "because deep down, I think I had always known. Not the details, not the truth, but the feeling that something wasn't right, that something had been taken, that something had been buried. Rachel handed me the folder. "Your name's in here too," she said, "along with your unit. What happened back then, it wasn't random." I took the folder slowly. Didn't open it. I didn't need to. Not right now. "I know," I said quietly. She nodded once, then looked down at Atlas. "He's the reason you found all this, isn't he?" I followed her gaze. Atlas didn't look up. He just stayed where he was. Steady. Present. "Yeah," I said. He always is." A small smile touched her face. "Well, the world's about to know that." I shook my head slightly. "He doesn't need that." "Maybe not," she said, "but people do." The words stayed with me, long after she walked back to her car, long after the engine started, long after the sound faded into the distance. I stood there for a while, just me and Atlas, the mountain behind us, the road ahead, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel lost. I didn't feel like I was chasing something I couldn't understand. I knew exactly where I stood. I looked down at the bag resting against my side, still heavy, still full, but not the way it had been before. This wasn't just evidence anymore. It was a choice, a direction, a chance to do something with everything that had happened. I crouched down again, meeting Atlas at eye level. "What do you think?" I asked softly. He tilted his head slightly, listening, always listening. I smiled faintly. "Yeah," I said. "I think so too." I stood back up and looked out across the ridge one last time, at the place that had almost broken me, the place that had taken everything I thought I had left, and then gave me something back. Not money, not land, not anything you could measure. Something else. Something that mattered more. I reached down, gripping the strap of my bag. "I'm not going back to where I started," I said quietly. "Not the center. Not the life I had before. That version of me was gone. And that was okay, because something new had taken its place. Something stronger. Something clearer. Something that knew exactly what it had lost and exactly what it had found." When I took a step forward, Atlas stood with me, side by side, like always. "We build something better," I said. "Not just for me, not just for him, for everyone who had been left behind, forgotten, told they were worthless." I looked back once more at the mountain, then turned away, because I finally understood something. The cave, the land, the place everyone thought had no value. It was never worthless. Not really. The only thing that had ever been worthless was the way the world had looked at people like me, and that was something I was going to change. If this story meant something to you, I want to hear from you. Drop a simple comment below. Type 1 if you believe loyalty like Atlas still exists in this world. Type 0 if you think people like Logan are still being overlooked every day. Or just tell me where you're watching from. I read every single comment. And if you stayed with this story all the way to the end, you're part of this journey now. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, because the next story might hit even closer to home. More real stories, more loyal dogs, more second chances. I'll see you in the next one.